I am live. Canelo Alvarez fight week. It is fight week. The king is back. The ruler is back. I wanted to do a video tonight. We're supposed to do power punches tonight, but I got some stuff that came up. First of all, thanks to all the new subscribers out there, all the new followers on Twitter. My Twitter is popping off right now. So thanks to all the Twitter followers as well. Most of my views are from archive, so make sure to leave that comment below if you're watching it in the archive, and hit that like button as well. And hit the sub button if you're not subbed. Hit that sub button. Calix Boxing 2.0 in the building. And we'll have a lot of fresh Canelo content coming out this week. And the official previews and predictions will come later in the week on this channel as well. We'll have some tomorrow. We got some fight content Friday, and we'll have some pre-fight stuff Saturday, and of course the post-fight stuff Saturday night as well. I always drop the post-fight stuff for a big fight on Saturday night. It may come on Sunday because I like to sleep on stuff as well if it's a big fight, especially if it's a close fight. Shout out to my guy Nando, always in the building supporting, man. I appreciate that. And like I said, if you're watching this in the archive, as most of you do, hit that like button, sub if you're not subbed, and leave a comment below. I like reading y'all's comments. This video is more dedicated on Canelo, who he is, how he got to this point, and where he is right now in his career, and the fact that he can sit back now and pick who he wants to fight. He's an ambitious, an aggressive, a generous A-side pound-for-pound king. It's good to have a pound-for-pound king like Canelo as opposed to his predecessor, Floyd Mayweather. So Floyd Mayweather, loved the talent. I was a fan of his talent. What I didn't appreciate was didn't always give us the fight we wanted at that time, and also fought once, maybe twice per year. The beautiful thing about Canelo is he's very much geared towards legacy. He's very much geared towards, you can tell Canelo is a bit of a boxing historian, especially when it comes to his Mexican predecessors, his peers as the all-time great pound-for-pound Mexican fighters. And the reason I believe that is because I think he knows what he has to do to separate himself from his predecessors, from his peers, the other all-time Mexican greats. The way he does that is he moves up, and the higher he goes in weight classes and accumulates legitimate belts, the better he looks against his Mexican predecessors. A lot of our Mexican fighters from previous generations are from the lower weight classes, middleweight, but lower than middleweight, welterweight, lightweight, featherweight. Canelo is now super middleweight, moving up to light heavyweight. How many great Mexican fighters have we had in those weight classes? He's flirting with cruiserweight. I heard today that they have no problem fighting Alexander Usyk at 201, a catch weight of 201 for the heavyweight championship. So you're starting to hear all this stuff, and I kind of believe it when even something as crazy as Canelo moving up to 201 heavyweight limit to fight an Usyk. With his track record, I sort of believe this stuff. But the higher he goes to accumulate more legitimate belts, if he were to not only be undisputed at 168, but move up to 175 and become undisputed by beating Bevo and Beterbiev, who will likely beat Joe Smith Jr. in June, which, by the way, that fight was announced today. Woo! Tell you what, I'm not a fan of New York, but I might have to fly up there for that one. Let's see, we got a great fighter, lucky to have him in this era. And that's what, I'm glad you said that. Close your eyes for a minute and just imagine boxing without Canelo Alvarez right now. You'd have a bunch of fighters fighting once, maybe twice a year if you're lucky at the top. I talked about it a couple months ago. If you look at the BoxRec top 50, and I hate BoxRec's pound for pound list, but the reason I cite it is because it gives us an expanded list, right? The only expanded list. So if you take the top 50, there was only one guy who fought more than twice in 2021. Some guys fought twice. Most guys fought once. Some guys even fought no times in the top 50. Canelo fought 3 times. The only one. who fought more than twice. Canelo is planning on fighting 3 times this year if things go well. And that's aggressive. It's ambitious to step up and fight a guy like Bevo and then say, if I get past that, I'm going to come back in 3 months and fight Gennady Golovkin, who, say what you want about Golovkin, it's going to be a physical fight regardless. And then say, after I fight Golovkin, I'm going to fight in December. That's ambitious. It's borderline cocky. It's confident. I love it as a fight fan. It's good to have an ambitious, aggressive pound-for-pound king who you're going to see a lot of, right? And that's my point to his detractors is, look, guys, if you're not happy that he's not fighting Charlo or Benavidez or Boo Andrade this year, you'll likely get that next year. He's likely to circle around after he goes through this three-fight DAZN deal and circle back to PBC's offer possibly, where they're talking about Errol Spence at 164. And I mean, I saw Reynoso say today, we're not against coming back to that deal, circling back and fighting Errol Spence at 164. That won't go well for Errol Spence, by the way. But Charlo, Errol Spence at 164, Benavidez, Boo Andrade, those guys would still all be on the table. And the beautiful thing about it, and this is why I try to tell his detractors, if you're not getting the fight that you want this fight or the next fight, or maybe even the next fight, the guy you might want to see him fight could be fourth in line, but you're still likely going to get that fight within a year of the conversation we're having. I just don't understand. With all the problems in boxing, you have a million problems in boxing to complain about. And you go past those and settle in on being a detractor and a complainer of Canelo Alvarez. I don't understand that. He's one guy that we don't have much to complain about, if anything, with him right now. He's giving us what we want. He's giving us activity. He's giving us entertainment because his fights are fun. He's giving us talent because he's talented. The only way you can pull off what he's doing is to be talented. You can't do it if you're a hype job. You can't. You can't move through 168 the way he's done, then go up. Look, last year y'all were saying, oh, and I even said if Canelo's going to lose, it's going to be due to him biting off more than he can chew with size. It would have to be at 175. And fast forward to today, I'm picking him to beat Bevo. I would pick him to beat Beterbiev. I would pick him to beat Joe Smith Jr. I would pick him to beat Zurdo Ramirez. Give me the top 10 guys at 175. I'd pick him to beat all of those guys. But last year, you guys were saying he'd never fight Bevo. He wouldn't fight Beterbiev. And here we are. And here we are. It just seems like you're constantly moving the goalposts when it comes to Canelo. You're constantly moving the goalposts. He wasn't going to fight Bivol, right? Well, he's fighting Bivol now. The Golovkin people were saying he would never go back to the trilogy for Golovkin and fight Golovkin after the first 2 fights. Well, here we are in September. If Undisputed presents itself, he would fight Undisputed against Beterbiev or Joe Smith Jr. He'd have no issues fighting Charlo or Benavidez. What did I just say at the top? He understands legacy. He understands how he can separate himself from his peers all time when it comes to his Mexican peers, all-time greats. And that's collecting hardware. The higher you get, the more hardware you collect at these higher weight classes, the more you separate yourself. So that's why it's Caleb Plant instead of David Benavidez. You guys are saying he's ducking David Benavidez by fighting Euro bums at 168. And now he's fighting Euro bums at 175. More on that in a minute. But if David Benavidez wouldn't have gotten David Benavidez's way, David Benavidez would have fought and lost to Canelo already. And he would have lost. If Charlo would fight somebody, Charlo may get the shot with Canelo. Canelo said it again today. Who is Selecki? Who is Selecki? Look at what I'm doing as compared to what they're doing. Why is Charlo fighting Selecki and David Benavidez fighting David Lemieux when he's minus 2,000 favorite? Boo Boo Andre just postponed another fight. It's like the 2000th time he's postponed a fight. These guys are their own worst enemy. And now they're paralyzed. Now they just want to take easy fights until the fight falls in their lap. Payday, right? You want payday, payday. And the reason they're doing that is they see how generous and how aggressive Canelo is. They see that he's going to fight 3 times a year. So if I don't get it this year, it's going to come along early next year or mid next year. So all I got to do is fight this one easy fight, wait around, and maybe it's going to fall in my lap. I don't want to take any chances. I don't want to miss out on an $8 to $10 million payday. Canelo's paying his B-sides better than any cash cow A-side has in a while. Guys are making $2 to $3 to $5 million to fight Floyd. They're making $8 to $10 to fight Canelo, because Canelo is out there wheeling and dealing. He's just trying to get the fights made. He understands legacy. He understands if he's got to fight 3 times a year, he's got to get these fights made. And he's generous. Billy Joe Saunders tried to pull some stuff the day before a fight. Said, I want a bigger ring. Canelo said, take it. Take it. Let's do it. Caleb Plant, PBC, tried to flex their muscles. Canelo walked away from the table, but he came right back. Said, you know what? People want to see this. I want it undisputed. If we can't do it in September, let's go back to the table. Let's get it done for November. Generous A-side. And he's giving the fans what they want. I'm happy. Most of the fans seem to be happy, but he's got these detractors that just, I swear, man, I think they're the type of people who will be miserable no matter what. I think they're the type of people that they go to a restaurant, beautiful woman across from them, beautiful plate of food. The food is great. They'll complain about the lighting. They go outside, beautiful weather. Oh, it's not beautiful enough. There's one cloud in the sky. Could have been 0. The birds aren't chirping loud enough for me. I mean, they're chirping. They're not chirping loud enough. That cardinal's not red enough for me. They'll always be miserable. Great fighter, lucky to have him in this era. That's right. That's right. And let me get to this point before I get to comments, because it's fresh in my mind, because I'll get all over the place. I hear that Canelo doesn't want to fight Charlo, Benavidez, Boo Boo Andre, right? There's also this notion, and I hate to go here, man. I don't like talking the race stuff. I really don't. But I see these lazy narratives that he doesn't want to fight slick African-American fighters. Can you name a slick African-American fighter north of 154? Like, are we considering Charlo? I mean, Charlo's a big puncher. Boo Boo Andre, I guess he's the closest to slick we've got. He's already beat Danny Jacobs and Marcus Brown at 175. Those are the only African-American fighters between 160 and 175 in top 10 rankings. So who are these invisible, slick African-American fighters that he's ignoring? And these invisible, slick African-American fighters, why are they avoiding the other slick, invisible, slick African-American fighters? Like, why isn't Charlo? Nobody's answering this for me. Why isn't Charlo fighting Boo Boo Andre? Why isn't Boo Boo Andre fighting Charlo? Why is Charlo not fighting Benavidez? Why is Benavidez not fighting Boo Boo Andre? Nobody's answering this. Canelo is ducking these guys, but none of these guys are fighting each other. And like I said, they don't want to take those chances because they don't want to miss out on those paydays. They do not have the confidence in their ability that Canelo has in his ability. They just don't. And that's why Canelo can be aggressive. He feels he can step up in the ring with anybody between 160 and 175, maybe even cruiserweight, because he's confident in his ability. These guys are not. If they were, they'd be fighting each other. Why is Charlo not fighting Boo Boo Andre? Boo Boo Andre just postponed his fight with Zach Parker. And these people who have been defending Boo Boo Andre didn't even talk about it. Church mice. David Benavidez is a minus 2,000 favorite against Lemieux. Fight somebody. Fight somebody. You got to fight somebody. Canelo's telling you what you need to do. You fight somebody. you'll get the fight. So Canelo wins. Where the track is going to say, what will it be the negative of his victory? They're going to find something, dude. If Canelo gets that far, will Usyk be his Waterloo? I don't see him being able to beat Usyk at 201. Just don't see that. I don't care what weight it's at. That's the biting off way more than he can chew moment. There's always too much. Like, there's always, you go a little too far. That's a little too far for Canelo. Can't beat Usyk, in my opinion, at 201. Makes me laugh when people say Canelo cherry picks. He unified by cherry picking. Exactly. If David Benavidez wouldn't have been his own worst enemy, he would have gotten the fight. He would have had the belt that Caleb Plant had, and he would have gotten the big money fight for all the marbles. He'd have got $10 million payday. But he messed up. He messed up. Charlo's been messing up. Charlo's coming off of a lackluster performance, and he's fighting Selecki. He messed up. He messed up. These guys are messing up. Boo Boo Andre's been his own worst enemy. Like, people say Boo Boo Andre's so avoided, dude. I can tell you, I mean, we can count on multiple hands how many offers this guy's turned down over his career. And on top of that, how many fights have been how many Boo Boo Andre fights have been postponed. And like I said, man, if you're not getting the fight you want, at least stay active, at least stay in people's faces, fight every 2 to 3 months, mow guys down until the fight comes to you. These guys are not behaving how champions should behave. And that's what makes Canelo a breath of fresh air. He's giving these guys a blueprint as to how to go for legacy and line your pocketbooks at the same time. Both Joe Smith Jr. and Beterbiev got heart and power. That fight's a crap. That is a beautiful fight. Beautiful fight. He will join the elite class of boxing history if he's able to accomplish undisputed at 2 different weight classes. That's right. And also Bud Crawford. And Bud's talking about possibly doing it in 3 weight classes. So there's like an arms race, right? When it comes to undisputed. We've already got multiple guys now who've done it once in 1 weight class. Now you're going to have a race to see who can do it twice, right? Like Canelo is 2 fights away from it. And he'll have some action in between then. And then Bud Crawford is 1 fight away from doing it twice as well. And then Bud's already looking ahead. He's like, if I do it here, I want 154 Charlo next. Boogeyman Bud. I love Boogeyman Bud. The Omaha assassin. He's aggressive as well. Hopefully he gets the fights that he deserves right now. I hope so. But that's the thing too. Like, is Canelo so aggressive with his career that even if he were to lose this fight, like let's imagine he loses this fight, where do you drop him in the pound for pound rankings? Do you still have him number 1? Because guess what? And even if he drops, guess what? He's right back in September, likely, unless he gets busted up. But he'll be right back in September. These other guys who are fighting, the guys who have fought in April, will we see them back in 2022? Possibly, but not likely, given their track record. So if you're fighting 3 times a year and you're fighting top competition, you're lapping these guys. Kentucky Derbies this weekend, right? Like it's the equivalent of a horse lapping the other horses. Like these other guys are so far behind that Canelo can't even see them in the rear view because he's putting in the work 3 times a year consistently. And these guys are once, maybe twice, and maybe you're going to get a top fight. Why do the other boxers aren't trying to fight each other? That's $1 million question that we're all asking ourselves. And we just want the people who are out here capping for Charlo, capping for Benavidez, capping for Boo Boo Andre, these type of fighters that, no, there's nothing personal. Like, I would love for all these guys to get active, knock guys out, be extremely talented. I would love to see like a legitimate threat to Canelo, a legitimate threat to him pound for pound, a legitimate threat for him in the ring. I would love to see that. The more successful, talented fighters we have in the sport, the better off it is for me as a fight fan. So I would love nothing more than for these guys to prove themselves in the ring, but they're not doing it. They're just not doing it. How many champions has Charlo fought in his career? How many champions has Boo Boo Andre fought in his career? How many champions has David Benavidez fought in his career? These guys aren't fighting top competition, and they're not even active. That's the most insane part. We'll be lucky to see all those guys once this year. Once. They're gonna show face. It's like me going to a party. I hate parties. I hate events. Don't like going. I'm a homebody. I say I'm gonna go show face. I'm just gonna go show face real quick, in and out. That's what these guys are doing. They're showing face for a year. Let me fight Selecki real quick. Let me fight Zach Parker real quick, and then wait for 2023 to see if Canelo points to me. That's what it is. I'm gonna see if these Canelo bucks fall into my pockets. I'm loving this new era boxing. A lot of dudes chasing greatness. Usyk, Fury, Shakur, Loma, Teofimo, Bud, Spence, etc. That's right. And undisputed seems to be more of a thing, right? More of these guys are using the 4-belt blueprint in order to get to their greatness. That's why I hope Bob listens to Shakur, right? Shakur is saying, I want to become undisputed at 130. I hope that presents itself to him. From what I understand, there are obstacles there. But I hope it presents itself for Shakur because I think he has the ability to be undisputed at 130, obviously, clearly. Chasing greatness. Loma, chasing greatness. Devin Haney going over to Australia, chasing greatness. Usyk moving up to heavyweight. Leaving Ukraine to fight Anthony Joshua again, chasing greatness. Tyson Fury. Let's hope he sticks around for undisputed. That would be chasing greatness. Teofimo doing what he did at 135, now wanting to move up to 140. Bud Crawford, great fighter. Hope he gets the fights that he deserves. Errol Spence fighting Ugas. Great things happening. Bam Bam Rodriguez moving up to 115 and sticking around to fight Soran Vise. Crazy. Chasing greatness. You're right, man. Like there are so many things to complain about, but I found myself complaining less and less and less as each week goes by. And especially on Canelo fight week, you just got to enjoy the greatness. As Nando says here, you got to enjoy the greatness. There's a lot of greatness to enjoy in this sport right now. Beterbiev Joe Smith Jr. It's going to be blood. It's going to be blood spattering over the first couple rows like a Gallagher concert. Joe Smith Jr. is going to be spraying out like some watermelon at a Gallagher concert. I hope my boy Joe Smith Jr. is competitive in that fight, but I don't have I'm not optimistic about that for him, but another great fight. 160 and 168, though, besides Canelo moving out to 168 and going through it, those two divisions can't get it together. They can't get it together, and they need to. Besides Golovkin fighting Murata, Munguia needs to get it together. Charlo needs to get it together. These guys need to fight each other. Benavidez needs to fight somebody. Caleb Plant's going to be there for Benavidez. Those fights are all possible. They need to get it. They need to get it cracking. They need to get it cracking. Don't just wait for the Canelo payday. Get it cracking. 154. Charlo Castaño, 2 in a couple weeks. What's that, a week and a half from now? Another great one. Greatness. Undisputed. 154 is a division that's been great. Top guys mixing it up. 147, we see what's happening there. You got a lot of young talent coming up there. 140 as well. 140 is a Shark Tank. 135 needs to get it together, but they finally have some top fights going on. I remember Grove saying he would never fight Callum Smith. Let's see what we got. I feel David Benavidez is the easiest fight for Canelo right now. I just don't understand the David Benavidez boogeyman talk. I just feel like they pick whatever guy is in the top 5 or 6 in the division that Canelo hasn't fought yet and said, oh, that's the guy. He's been avoiding that guy. That's the one guy he hasn't fought, so he must be avoiding that guy. They're just picking narratives now. He hasn't fought Benavidez, but as I explained, what did Benavidez not have that's important to Canelo? Canelo's looking to fill trophy cases right now. Benavidez doesn't have a trophy for him to take. Plant did. Billy Joe Saunders did. And the sad part about that is David Benavidez had a trophy that he gave away. And that's David Benavidez's fault. David Benavidez could have gotten $10 million to lose that trophy, but instead he gave the trophy away. That's David Benavidez's fault. So pull out your small violin all you want. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Charlo could have been fighting dudes, and he's not. And if he's not, he could at least stay active and fight 3 times a year, but he's not. Charlo has himself to blame for not landing the Canelo payday. And he needs to look to his brother on how to conduct a career, because 154 Charlo is a much different beast. That's a lion. He's a much different beast from 160 Charlo. I can tell you that. Boo Boo Andre, nope. We've already talked about that. Nope. So these guys have themselves to blame. What does Bevo have that Canelo wants? Meaningful trophy. He goes, gets it. He's 1 fight away from undisputed in the division. What does Golovkin have that Canelo wants? He wants to finish off the trilogy. He hears people saying 1-1. Oh, Golovkin may have won both fights. And he's going to circle around and say, you know what? Let's finish this. I'm going to do this for the fans. Let's finish it. It has to be something meaningful for him. So Charlo, Benavidez, these guys aren't doing anything meaningful. And they're not names either. People are trying to act like they're names. Charlo's not a bigger name to the casual fan than Bevo. I know people want to act like that, but he's just not. Just not. Salute to Chicano Prophet. I like Jamel Charlo, but Jamal is a joke. I think that's how we all feel right now. Canelo by robbery, that is all. I'm a detractor. Fair enough. Fair enough. And it could, you never know. Bevo can come out, work the jab. And I don't want to spend too much time on stylistically what's going to happen, because that's for tomorrow. Because I got a lot of stuff to say about Bevo's jab. Great jab. The fact that Bevo is number 2 in boxing at limiting power punches landed on him. Shakur Stevens is number 1. Bevo's 2. But one thing to look out for is Bevo does not, he's atrocious. He has an atrocious percentage of power punches landed on his opponents. So you got to look out for that. Everything's pointing towards a Canelo decision, but more on that tomorrow. Roids, look, you're going to get me on the steroids talk and the PED talk. We'll have a separate video about that, because I got a lot to say about that. And people who have followed me before know I have a lot to say about the PED issues in boxing and how I feel about it. And all the guys who are likely on who haven't gotten caught. And that's a long conversation. Unify at 168, then go straight to 175 to fight another champion. He's being criticized. Exactly. Exactly. If you want to pick Spence to beat Canelo, go ahead. Go ahead. It ain't going to be me. Why isn't Charlo fighting Plant? Exactly. Why isn't Charlo fighting anybody? Why is Charlo fighting Selecki? Why isn't Charlo fighting Benavidez? Why isn't Charlo fighting Caleb Plant? Why isn't Charlo fighting Boo Boo Andre? All these guys could be fighting each other, but they're not. So Cry Me a River, Justin Timberlake. Pull out the small violin. All those guys should have been stars by now, but they never fight anyone to enhance their status. That is right. You got to go through the fire to get that. And that's why Tank's career is stagnant right now. And Tank can draw. I got to give Tank that, because Tank is entertaining, but his career is stagnant right now. He's going to have to eventually step in with that top 135 guy. You got to do it. You got to do it. It's a sport at the end of the day. I know it's a business, but it's also a sport. It has to resemble somewhat of a sport at some point. So if you see guys not treating it that way, their career is going to be stagnant. I don't see Canelo winning a round against Usyk as a bad style matchup. I think that's a terrible Terrible matchup and a terrible idea. But guess what? If Canelo does that, it's a no-lose for me. He can lose every round just for stepping in the ring with a guy like Usyk at 201-pound catch weight. Props to him. And let me bring up catch weight real quick. This fight is at 175. Canelo could have done something that a lot of his peers have done in the past with catch weights. Bevo, you want to fight with me? You want $8 million? Meet me at 169 for all your belts. We're going to fight at 169 for the lightweight belts. We're going to meet at 169 for the 175-pound belts. He could have done that. He could have said, we're going to meet at 168.1. Could have done it. He didn't. And on top of that, on top of not asking for a catch weight, he didn't even ask for a rehydration clause. So we're going to do this at 175, and guess what? Rehydrate or whatever you want. Go ahead. It's the same thing as Billy Joe Saunders. Take the bigger ring. It's the same thing as Caleb Plant. Look, you want to play hardball? We'll let it go for a couple months. We'll do the fight in November instead of September. I'm not worried about it. Generous, ambitious, aggressive, A-side. Talented, entertaining. He's got it all, man. Benavidez is confident he tried fighting Charlo, but Charlo had excuses. Yeah, but it's all of them. It's Benavidez too. Benavidez has been Benavidez's worst enemy. Benavidez, the easiest fight for Canelo. I think Charlo is the easiest fight. If I had to rank them, if I had to rank the guys left between 160 and 175 for Canelo right now, I would go Bevo. I would go Beterbiev, maybe. Beterbiev and Bevo is like 1A, 1B for me. And then you would say the style matchup for I understand Golovkin is up there in age. I understand this won't be a popular opinion, but I don't agree with this notion that if we get to Canelo Golovkin in September, Canelo's just gonna run through him. I don't agree with that. It seems lazy to me. And I get it. Golovkin's up there in age. I get it. Golovkin started slow against Murata. I get it. But some guys, it doesn't matter how many times they fight or what point in their career they fight, it's always going to be a tough, close fight. And Golovkin may be that guy for Canelo. You never know. This could be Pacquiao-Marquez 3, where we said, there's no way Marquez can hang with this Pacquiao at this point in Pacquiao's career at this weight moving up. There's no way. And then guess what? Marquez goes in there and I thought he won the fight. And most people thought he won the fight, the third fight. And we saw what happened in the fourth fight. That narrative ended up being lazy and wrong. This one might be too. So I would pick Golovkin maybe third, but I've never felt like Charlo has been a threat to Canelo. I don't. I think that's the easiest fight for him. I think that's an easier fight than Benavidez. Boo Boo Andrade may be the fourth toughest out of those guys. Out of those six guys, I probably pick Boo Boo fourth, Benavidez fifth, and then Charlo sixth. I just think that Charlo is easy work for Canelo. He's too economical. He's not going to open up enough to get to Canelo and win rounds, and his punching power is not going to bother Canelo. If Kovalev's punching power didn't bother Canelo at 175, if Golovkin's punching power for 24 rounds didn't bother him, Charlo's punching power sure in hell won't. Do you consider Teofimo at undisputed at 130? Depending on who you talk to. I don't know. Depending on who you talk to. Some people swear to me that he is. Some people swear to me that he isn't. So I don't know. Semantics, I guess. But officially, he's not considered undisputed. Still undisputed at 168. Andrade has never fought a champion. True story. He hasn't. And I don't know if Charlo has. I don't know if Benavidez has. I think between the three of them, they've fought one champion combined. I think that's what I saw. Between Charlo, Benavidez, and Boo Boo Andrade, I think between those three guys, they fought one champion. That's pathetic. That's absolutely pathetic. How can you beg for a fight and act like you're being slighted and wronged when you don't fight any other champions? And look how long you've been fighting. Devin Haney going to Australia is brass balls. Yes, it is. Props to Devin Haney. Props to Devin Haney. What if Canelo becomes undisputed in light heavyweight? What options does Benavidez and Charlo have? Well, if he becomes undisputed at 175, the smart thing to do at that point is drop all the belts. Because as Josh Taylor pointed out, when you get to a point where you have to defend all the belts, you're paying so much in sanctioning fees. I think he said he was paying like 11% of his purse was going towards sanctioning fees for all the 4 belts to defend, in order to defend all 4 belts simultaneously. So it becomes too expensive to defend undisputed. So once you have that title, it's unsustainable to keep it, because they're taxing the hell out of you in order to keep those belts. And that's one of the obstacles in the way for defending undisputed. And I'm sure it's one of the reasons why we don't get too many undisputed champions by defeating the undisputed champion. I think the only time we've had an undisputed, I think it's only been done twice, right? Where the undisputed champion became undisputed by beating the previous undisputed champion. Jermaine Taylor did it against Bernard Hopkins. Who else was it? Maybe only once. Somebody can fact check me on that. But it doesn't happen often. Catterall should have done it against Josh Taylor. He won the fight, but not officially. It just doesn't happen often. So once you become undisputed at 175, Canelo's likely going to drop those belts. He'd be smart to. Don't pay the sanctioning fees. You're bigger than the belts at that point. Canelo's bigger than those belts at 175 once he has them. He's already gotten the title of become undisputed in 2 weight classes at that point. Drop him. And then he can circle back around to those other deals that PBC's offering him, right? 164 against Errol Spence Jr., which I feel would be an easy fight for him. What's the other one? Charlo, which we also feel would be an easy fight for him. Circle around to the easier fights after you're done doing the tough work, or he can move up to cruiser and try to become undisputed in 3 weight classes, which is what Terrence Crawford's trying to do. Or he can be crazy and fight Usyk at 201. Let me see what we got here. Let me get to this. I think I got a super chat down here, and I definitely appreciate this. Juan Garza. Bivol is the most dangerous fight he can take. Charlo isn't fighting anybody, and Benavidez as a guy who was outclassed by Saunders and Triple G. I definitely appreciate this support, man. And I agree with the comment. A lot of people are telling me they feel Bivol is the toughest fight between 160 and 175. I don't know if it's Bivol or Beterbiev. I go back and forth on that, because Beterbiev, man, that guy, he just punches like a mule. He is scary. He's a scary dude. So when we say there are 2 theories on this, right? At some point, Canelo moves up too much and faces a guy who is too physically imposing, and he would lose that way. But then I flip on that, because I say if he went 24 rounds with Golovkin, and then he went and fought Kovalev at 175. So he fought all those rounds against the 2 biggest punchers between 160 and 175, and those guys' punching power did not bother him. Is Beterbiev's punching power going to bother him? Likely not. And then you have the people who say it's going to be the movement that bothers Canelo. I think that's overplayed as well, because yes, Mayweather box circles around him, right? We all saw that 10 years ago. But he also fought Austin Trout. He also fought Arislandi Lara. He fought a guy who can box in Amir Khan, but Amir Khan was overmatched as far as size. But he's fought guys who can move. He's fought guys with lateral movement. I was told that Billy Joe Saunders was going to be his toughest fight at 168, because Billy Joe Saunders had great lateral movement. Look how that worked out. Caleb Plant, a slick guy who can move, lateral movement. So he's faced movers. He's faced guys with lateral movement. What we're working with right now, what we're looking at, is a guy who can face many styles. He's an all-time great already, and he's right in the middle of his prime. Right in the middle of his prime. I mean, just phenomenal what we're seeing from Canelo. I'm trying to get back to these comments real quick. Charlo is the boogeyman. To who? He's the boogeyman to who? Bevo might be number 2 against a bunch of tomato cans. War Canelo. Yeah, I'm disappointed with Charlo as well. Bevo needs to start fast and impose his size. I'm hoping for a great fight. That's right. I just don't know if Bevo's a taller guy, but is he more? Is his physicality going to bother Canelo? We've already seen like your height can work against you when it comes to Canelo if he gets on the inside. So that's going to be the game, right? That's going to be the fight because Bevo is not a power puncher, as I stated earlier. And I don't want to, because I'm going to get to this tomorrow, but I keep going back to Bevo doesn't allow you to land too many power punches against him, but he also doesn't land too many. So he's going to try to make this, keep this at range, keep Canelo on the end of the jab. Easier said than done. And when Canelo gets on the inside, it's tough. It's tough to deal with. So we'll see how the fight goes. But yes, Bevo needs to start fast because what happens is rounds 3 or 4, as we saw against Caleb Plant, as we saw against Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo starts to take your best assets away from you. He took away Caleb Plant's jab around round 4. So I expect him to do the same thing for Bevo, but it might take him a little longer. So if you're Bevo, you want to stack up those early rounds on the scorecard. Canelo's going to beat the S out of Bevo, make it look real easy. Possible. 9-0 with round 1 over here. Fast start. They didn't even want to negotiate. The almighty A side strikes again. Let's see what we got. Spence beats the S out of GGG and Smith and Saunders and Plant. No. Nando makes you miss the 90s. So I appreciate all these comments coming in. I'm trying to get to all of them. My guy, Mr. Boxing Tate, today too. And Mr. Boxing Tate today too. Man, I've been missing the content. You need to drop this heat. The YTBC misses you. All right. Last I checked, you weren't dropping content. So you can correct me if I'm wrong if you are again, because I've been busy, but we need you back, especially when it comes to heavyweight talk, because I'm seeing a lot of sideways heavyweight talk out here. Personally, I could go without the third GGG fight, though. I'd rather see a worthy guy. And I think that's how most people feel, most hardcore boxing fans feel. I disagree, but most casual fans want to see, if you look at the polls they put out, ESPN polls, anything you see like casuals go to, Fox Sports polls, they overwhelmingly want to see the third fight with Triple G. So that fight would do the best numbers, whether we like it or not as boxing fans. It does seem threadbare at this point to most boxing fans, but I just think it's going to be a great fight regardless, and violence regardless. So I want to see it, but I understand where people are coming from when they say that. They want to see fresh meat. I get it. GGG Canelo 3 could be like Marquez Pacquiao 4. No one really wanted it, but those bitter rivalries. Yep, I think so. I think it's going to be a great fight. I think it will be a great fight. GGG is starting to look haggard and more hittable than ever, in my opinion. I see Canelo whooping him in the third fight in a decisive, convincing UD. And I think that's, most people are seeing like 116, 112, 112-ish, like a clear and concise victory for Canelo in that fight if it were to happen. But look at what we just did, right? Like everybody else, Canelo has been washing, right? And everybody else, like Bevo, even Bevo is plus 400 underdog. I don't think Golovkin is going to be a plus 400 underdog against Canelo. I could be wrong, but we're expecting Canelo to walk through these guys. And by the way, I think Bevo is undervalued at plus 400. This is a tough fight, but I don't think Golovkin is going to be that big of an underdog. Could be wrong. So either way, it's going to be a great fight. Either way. So I wanted to get these thoughts in tonight. Went a little longer than I expected. I will be back tomorrow because I wanted to talk about the stylistic matchup of this fight, preview it, and give my official prediction. So I appreciate y'all tuning in. Y'all have a great